now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Magandang araw po mga kababayan, Joy Anglin po. Nabili na po ba ninyo ang dish pack ng Miracle Brokers? Up to 200 pounds kaya pong ilagay dito. Halina po kayo, Christmas na sa Pilipinas, tamang-tama po para sa mga ate at kuya. Halina po kayo dito sa Miracle Brokers. Miski pwede pong ilagay dito sa box. Pera lang po ang jowa nyo.
Contact us at 949-5989 or email us at info@miraclebrokers.
Hi, good morning, beautiful folks. How are you guys doing? My apologies for a slightly late start. The internet apparently had been down since 2:30 last night. So when I got up this morning, I'm just like, nothing seems to be working, folks, because without the internet, hello, we all rely on the internet to work, to do our jobs, to get things done. So I'm just going to have a quick look to see what is going on. I think we are fully up and operational. Thank you guys so much for joining me this morning. Good morning, Brandon. Brandon is the first one out of the gate. Today is November the 5th. Beautiful Thursday. It's a rainy day, folks. We know we're going to have a couple of rainy days going into the weekend as we get the remnants of Hurricane Eta, whatever we're calling her this year. And listen, this is the first time I think the second time in history that we have pretty much gone to, was it 28 named storms? So if we get another one after this, and hello, it's still early November, so it's anybody's game in terms of what can happen between now and December the 1st when we think hurricane season is over. I kind of have the feeling that, you know what, this hurricane season is going to throw us for a loop-de-loop. And as a result of that, I'm not trusting anything. I'm like, I'm not going to put my goat out on the situation. However, I kind of feel like anything is possible. And if anything is possible, well, Murphy's Law, if it can't happen, it's probably going to happen, right? So we're going to just keep an eye on the situation. I haven't had a look because, like I said, the internet was down this morning. I haven't had a look as yet to see exactly what is going on with the storm. The last advisory I saw last night, she was down to, I keep calling it a she, but I don't even know if it's a she, down to about 40 miles per hour, which we expected that the landmass would do significant damage to the storm. And so that is not surprising that Nicaragua, the people of Honduras, have really been under a lot of pressure as a result of this storm. And this storm has been shredded now by the landmass. So we shall see how that plays out. I'm just going to see if I can get some coordinates on this storm to see exactly where it's at. And then we can certainly take it from there. Let me just see here, folks. Let me just see. All right. As you guys know, Alric Lindsay will be joining us this morning. I see that he's logged in already. Alric, give us a few. We're going to dispense with our usual greetings to people who are tuned in to the program. And of course, we remind you that Thursdays are going to be SpeakEasy Thursdays for a bit, as well as we'll get into some tech stuff at the end of the show, time permitting. And Alric will be our guest for the foreseeable future. He has a lot of issues that are on his mind that he wants to discuss and join in on. And we are more than happy to have that discourse with him. So we're going to get all of the details here in a second about today's discussion. And we have actually been doing, I'll tell you what, we've got the podcast now. As you guys know, you can actually go online after the show, listen to our podcast. Some people prefer just to listen to audio. They may not have all the requirements of video. Some people don't have Facebook. So I just want to remind you that if you don't have access to Facebook, most of these videos you can still listen to, even if you don't have a Facebook account, because Facebook permits you to go to a public page and have access to a lot of the content on a public page. So I've got relatives who are elderly, you know, the elderly aunt who's in her 70s. She's not a Facebook person. She's not going to set up a Facebook account, but she is still very much interested in what's happening in this country, and she enjoys listening and watching to the show. So a big shout out to Auntie there. But, you know, she can still go do it. You can also do it from YouTube. So please don't forget that we are on our YouTube channel as well. And you've got some options over at YouTube. So a number of different ways to watch it. We have a WhatsApp news group. So do not forget, if you want to get the latest stuff as it's happening, get on that WhatsApp news group and we will be more than happy to send you those news alerts. So I do see my emails are finally coming in. So just give me a second to give you an update on the storm. And we shall see kind of what we're looking at. Of course, the biggest thing with this storm is right now she's shredded. And I keep calling her she, not knowing if that's the correct term. But right now she is shredded with the anticipation that she will go back into the Caribbean Sea. This is the projected path, and reformulate. And this is why we are all concerned, because that reformulation is is a bit concerning. So let's have a look here at what we're dealing with. Give me one quick second. I'm going to try a little something today with our alerts that we send out. So normally we do a little reminder to the WhatsApp group to say, hey guys, don't forget that we're live now. And what I want to do today, I'm going to try it in real time to see if this works. We're going to actually send out a real time, because every single time when we're on the website, if we send out, it says Outlook needs to close. Okay, so if we send out like a news story or whatever, it will actually pop up as it sends an alert to like well over, I think it's almost 11,000 people that have registered for the website who want to receive notifications every time a website story is posted. So I'm going to try it this morning where, of course, I have to kind of multitask and do this as we are getting ready for the show. But I think if I do it in the early moments of the show, those people will get notifications that we're live in case this is a topic of interest to them. What I find is a lot of people tend to go back afterwards and they'll listen to it after, and that's perfectly fine as well because it stays up on Facebook and it definitely stays up on YouTube. So the legal services bill is under scrutiny, and we're going to talk about this. It'll be coming up in the December session of the Legislative Assembly. And I was kind of confused about whether or not they were actually having a December session, because when the Premier made his remarks a couple days ago about the changes that are coming to the legislature, I thought he said the next time we reconvene, we will be the House of Parliament. And I thought he meant 2021. But apparently there is going to be an LA session in December, and this will be focused or headlined on the agenda. So good morning to Catherine. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you. Let me just see here. Good morning, Larry from New York. How are things going? He says, oh, happy birthday to his wife, Sonia Brown. Sonia, happy birthday. Larry, what are you getting your beautiful wife for Christmas? Good morning, Miss Morna. Unfortunately, Miss Morna, when you use those little emojis, we can never see them on here. I see them on Facebook, but not in this session that we're in. Marshall says, good morning, Cayman, from a cold morning in North Carolina. Anne-Marie, beautiful day today. How are you? Look at Judy Faye, our good friend. Good morning, KY. Miss Judy Faye, where are you, my friend? And of course, greetings to Elizabeth, who has also joined us. Now, tell me what's going on with the presidential election, because when I went to bed last night, President Trump was still trailing. However, my understanding is that the path for Joe Biden was a little bit closer, and Trump was still kind of like complaining, and he started a bunch of lawsuits. And I mean, he's like a spoiled child, when they don't get their way, they're going to throw a tantrum and do all sorts of stuff. Now, if there was any legitimate reason to file a lawsuit, and here's the irony of it, in the states that Trump is losing, he has said that he wants the voting to stop. Why? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Just because he's losing, he thinks that the American people may not have woken up with their good senses about them on election day and prior to, because apparently the votes that are really making a difference for Joe Biden are the people who voted early, the people who sent in their ballots. So he is claiming voter fraud with no evidence whatsoever. In fact, my understanding is, from watching a variety of different news media, is the voting process has been relatively straightforward. They've been counting. Some states have, this is why it's taken a while to get the results. We may not get results till later today or even into tomorrow, because they have been taking their time and double counting to make sure that there are no errors and there are no mistakes, because they know the type of person that Donald Trump is, I suspect, and they do not want to have any errors or any questionable situations on their hands. Now, there's about 100 and something persons, a very small group of persons, at one polling station last night, all Trump supporters outside demanding to be let in to this was on CBS News, but they were demanding to be let into a particular polling station, which was happening at an arena in one of the outstanding states. So, quite interestingly enough, there's police presence there to keep the peace, of course, and the people who are working, the workers who are there counting, they've got machines, all this kind of stuff. They don't need this type of interruption. I'm sure there are independent observers to the process who are more than permitted to sit there and watch. But Donald Trump just assumes that if he is losing, it has to be something fraudulent going on. Donald Trump, has it ever occurred to you that maybe the American people are just sick and tired of you and your shenanigans? And your reality show in the White House has just come to an end. You are an apprentice. All good things must come to an end, or all bad things must come to an end. Everything has an end. And so your number is up, it looks like. Now, there is a possibility, ever so slightly, so we don't want to rule it out. There is a possibility that Donald Trump could, if he basically, I think, won Pennsylvania would be the big one for him. And it looks like he actually may take Pennsylvania because he is in the lead by a couple, like 48.1% to 50.7%. So he could take Pennsylvania. That would give him 20 electoral votes, but then he needs to take a few more as well. 89% of the estimated votes are reported already for Pennsylvania. All eyes are on Georgia, apparently. So Georgia, they've got 96% of the estimated votes in. And Georgia, it says here half an hour ago that the lead for Trump is dwindling in Georgia. So it is literally neck and neck, 49.6% for Donald Trump and 49.2% for Joe Biden. And that's 96% of the votes being counted. So it's very possible that it could just be a couple thousand votes that will separate the victor in the state of Georgia. Now, apparently in the US, they do have a situation where if it's less than 1% difference between the candidates, it is possible, I see the numbers just changed here slightly, it is possible for a recount. But all the lawsuits that Donald Trump is filing this morning and all the recounts that he's demanding, and he's not just demanding recounts, like I said, he's actually telling them to stop counting, which I think is crazy. This has never happened in the history of America, ever, ever, ever. And I think that certainly says a lot about the type of person that Donald Trump is. So all eyes are in Georgia this morning. The Senate race may drop below 50%, which could force a January runoff and determine Senate control. So all of the various races are very, very tight in the US. Like I literally saw the Senate race. It was like 50-50, and that one or two people is going to decide whether or not the Republicans have the majority or the Democrats have the majority. So now we're understanding that because of Georgia, it may actually happen where they're going to have a runoff in January. Isn't that something? So all eyes are there. Lawsuits, like I said, are being filed. So it looks like Trump may win Arizona. Now, I know that there were some people who were, and everybody's like, why does CNN have one set of numbers? Fox has another set. New York Times has another set. Some of them are trying to call states before the final count is in. And some of these states have said, listen, we're not going to give you any updates at this time until we actually have some final numbers. So there are projections that are being made. And of course, we see the danger of projections. So I think the best thing for people to do is to just stand tight. So at 3:06 a.m., the New York Times is saying that Trump hit the percentage he needed to stay on track to potentially win Arizona, but it may not hold. And the next release is not expected until Thursday night for Arizona. But with 86% of the votes in, it's now showing Joe Biden actually in the lead in Arizona. So I don't know. This is what I'm saying. There's certain states you got to just wait and have, have a wait to see what's going to happen. So in Maricopa County, that's Phoenix, Arizona, they just posted its last numbers for the night. That was at 2:54 a.m. And Trump narrowed Biden's edge in Arizona slightly to 68,390 votes, or less than 3 percentage points. So he's still not in the lead, but he's narrowed it a little bit in Arizona. So here we go. More than 150 pro-Trump supporters, some armed, gathered outside the Maricopa County election office and chanted, "Count the vote," as officials continue to just do that. But I think they're confused because Trump is saying, don't count the vote. He's saying, stop the count. Trump, your supporters didn't get the memo. They don't sound like they're too bright out there. And of course, there are people who are saying that every single vote must be counted. Now, we all know that how the process works in the US, it's not really the popular vote that necessarily gets you elected, because they do have this electoral vote system. But in some key states, obviously, the popular vote will impact the electoral numbers that a particular president gets. So protesters are starting to march in Minneapolis, New York, and elsewhere against President Trump, while some of his supporters, a very small number, gathered near a Phoenix building where crucial votes were being counted. So they've said about 150 of those individuals. And, everybody else believes in democracy, and they are like, listen, count the vote, every single last vote. So in Minneapolis, protesters blocked a freeway, prompting arrests. In Portland, hundreds gathered on the waterfront to protest the president's attempted interventions in the vote count. As a separate group protesting the police urging racial justice surged through downtown, smashing shop windows and confronting police officers and National Guard troops. I really hope that the Americans remain calm. You've got to show the world why you claim that you're the best country in the world. A democratic election process has been one of the foundations for a very long time of the American system, whether you like someone or not. And I think that has to be, if I were an American right now, that would have to be the prevailing message. Whether I like Trump, whether I like Joe Biden, it's all about the process, and the process of democracy and the elements that make it a democratic society have to be fiercely protected. There's absolutely no other way to do this. So we're keeping an eye on that situation. There's some signage up that says every vote count. And of course, we are well aware that there's some anticipated, unfortunately, protesting and violence as a result of that. I really wish to see it not be that way. Honestly, people are afraid. There are people who are saying, for example, this lady, Carol Carmick, she's 59. She says it's such a dangerous moment as she joined a protest in Portland out of fears that Mr. Trump will try to stay in power even if he lost the election. And, people are saying that because Trump himself has said that. He has said that he will not be moved. And so the American people who do believe in the democratic process do not feel like that is the right thing for him to be doing. I mean, I'm shocked that a president of the United States would basically say that people have spoken, whatever the process is. In 2016, Hillary Clinton lost the popular vote won the popular vote by 3 million over Donald Trump, but she still lost the electoral vote. And you know what? She said, that's our process. The process has worked, and she has nothing else to say about it. now we have a man who looks like it is going to lose both the popular vote and the electoral vote, and he intends to stay in office, or he's going to fight it, mounting all of these legal actions. It really is quite unbelievable. But it is indicative of the type of person that President Trump has been from day one. So none of us should be surprised when he says that even if he loses, he is not going to leave the House. He's not going to leave the White House. And there have been so many memes going around. We'll do some memes maybe tomorrow, because I'm very conscious of the fact that we have our guest Alric here with us. Good morning to you, Miss Ethel. Marshall says he's such an idiot and sore loser. He needs to get the counting. He needs to let the counting take its place, take its process. Good morning, Miss Sue. Irvelin says he needs to go, man. This is the type of people he's producing. Well, he's not producing them, but he's certainly allowing them to feel very comfortable in showing their true selves and who they are. Having said that, it's only 150 people. So the vast majority of people are obviously allowing the process to work. Tracy, beautiful Tracy, is joining us from Jamaica. Good morning, Tracy. Are you getting any rain in your area of Jamaica? Olivia, thank you so much for tuning in. Irvelin says these people are stupid. Blind leading the blind. Good morning, Flashpoint. Trump is concerned about potential pending legal action if he doesn't get reelected. Now, Flashpoint, that is a very interesting point that you make, because the president seems to be offered some immunity as president of the United States of America. Good morning, Carol. Carol's of the viewpoint that he is a complete dictator, fires people who argue against him, and says he won't leave even if he loses. Yes, Carol, it is quite shocking, to be quite frank. Tracy confirms that Jamaica continues to get rain, just like us. Tomorrow, we'll do an update with the situation in Honduras, because I think into today, they'll start to get a better view of exactly what is transpiring with the storm and the actual damage that it has caused. We have seen some video footage. My apologies. We have seen some video footage, some pictures from different places in Honduras. And I want to talk about the situation there, because one of the persons, one of the persons who's been watching her show has said that, she feels that right now, this is the only program that even shares any news on Honduras, and that people remain very, very concerned about what is happening there. So we will certainly, I think, we will certainly keep an eye on that situation and update you guys as we go along. So let me just see here. All right, so some information on the storm. Let's just have a quick perusal. So what we have here is now 30 miles per hour. So it's just a tropical depression. Maximum sustained winds, 30 miles per hour. It's currently west-northwest, moving at 8 miles per hour. So the speeds have picked up. And the it's 14.5 north and 87 west. Pressure, of course, is in line with a tropical depression. So it's going to probably just dump a lot of rain on the remaining areas of Nicaragua. But of course, Nicaragua has managed to break this storm apart to a significant degree. And so we will now be continuing to watch what it does as it comes back into the Caribbean Sea with a very keen eye. The National Weather Center, of course, has issued some tropical storm advisories for a number of different areas. We are still in the path of the potential wide cone of the storm. So we just got to watch it. Like I said on Monday, just be prepared The last update was 3 hours ago. We'll be expecting another update, I think, here shortly. So they did one at 3 a.m. They don't do them as frequently once the storm is has been degraded, but they're still watching it. So this is what the National Hurricane Center says. Interest in Belize, Western Cuba, and the Cayman Islands should also monitor the progress of this system. So right away, we've been warned. The governments of Honduras and Nicaragua continue to issue warnings concerning heavy rain and flooding in those countries, and interest there should continue to monitor it as well. Isolated maximum storm totals of 40 inches of rain in Honduras and eastern Nicaragua. That's a lot of rain, folks, especially when you have mountainous areas and you're prone to flooding and landslides. Jamaica is expected to get an additional 3 to 5 inches of isolated showers from this, and isolated maximum storm totals of 15 inches. And the Cayman Islands into portions of Cuba, 10 to 20 inches, isolated maximum totals of 30 inches. Well, I think that's more for Cuba probably than us, but we are going to have a rainy day. So the potential for flash flooding, river flooding, life-threatening flash floods and river flooding is expected, along with landslides and areas of higher terrain in Central America. And that is where Honduras and Nicaragua have been extremely concerned. So it's going to go back out into the Gulf of Honduras by tonight. And then it's projected to approach the Cayman Islands and Western or Central Cuba this weekend. So that's where we are, folks. Get ready. And remember, it doesn't take much. I mean, are we not learning a lesson every time? It's like 24 hours. It can go from 30 miles per hour to all of a sudden a Cat 2, 3, or 4 storm. It doesn't really take much with the water temperatures and so on just being perfect for development for this storm to turn into a major hurricane. Soka Phillips says, Marshall, thing is, he may not lose. Well, there is still a slim margin, a path for him to potentially win this, but it is lessening every single day that the process continues. So fingers crossed, we shall see. I think everybody knows I'm not a Trump fan. I'm not a Trump supporter. I cannot, I try not to get too involved in American politics. And I say that with a little bit of a chuckle because my husband's like, but you sit there talking about him. And, I want to share information with you guys. And I know that a lot of you, Soka, Larry, who else? Louis, I haven't seen Louis yet this morning. Marshall, all of you guys are Caymanians or Caymanian adjacent people with connections, but you live in the States. There's Charles Whitaker. There's a lot of Caymanians who have connections to the US. Of course, we do care about what happens, especially when you've had a president like President Trump. I mean, I've cared less when other people have been in office, whether they're Republicans, Democrat. That part I don't actually care about. I think if I were living in the US and I was an American citizen, I would be an independent so that I can vote depending on the candidate and how my conscience goes. I'm not really into tying into a party system, right? So, as we gear up for our own elections here in the Cayman Islands, I think that that's where our focus has to be. And that is ultimately the most important thing for us. So Marshall says, all the same, he needs to let the voting process continues. Hans, good morning. Hans is in agreement with my last comment saying facts. Hans, do you work at the airport? I see your little photo there. Looks like you are hanging out on a runway or some sort. So so let us focus on the Cayman Islands elections now, which we have coming up on May the 26th of 2021. There are some candidates, that we're keeping a keen eye on all of them, but there are some, I think there needs to be some movement of the incumbents, not everybody, but some people got to go so that the people can feel like their voice is actually being fully represented in this country. I get so many messages every single day from people who are just calling out for help in various walks of life. So Hans confirms that he used to work for Island Paving for the airport project. Oh, cool. Very nice. Okay, so Alric Lindsay is joining us, folks. In case you don't know who Alric is, Alric actually is running for Georgetown South. The incumbent in Georgetown South is Barbara Connolly. And Ms. Barbara is a nice person, but politics isn't about just being a nice person. There are many other qualities that we want to make sure that we are looking for in a politician. You know, I was speaking to someone recently about Barbara, and I've known Barbara a really long time in the political circle. So she was, like me, one of the founding members of the PPM. We were there in the early days. So this would have been around 2000s and going into 2003, I think, when the party was officially formed or thereabouts. And, you know, she's been in the party, doing things in the party for a really long time. Someone recently shared with me, though, that they were surprised that after the incident at Smith Cove, or Smith Barcadier, some of us call it, she really got upset at individual people for protesting, for saying that they care more about the environment than politicians. And some of the protesters who were there that day, ironically, have been removed from her list. Like, she's unfriended them on social media. She has removed them from a WhatsApp group. And in fact, one lady said that she created the WhatsApp group and then she was removed from the WhatsApp group. So she's like, how the heck do I get removed when it was a group that I helped create? So I think that, unfortunately, when you talk about the world of politics, number one, if you're going to jump into it as a politician, you've got to have thick skin, because people are going to say all sorts of things about you that are not necessarily true. However, you have to know what your truth is, and you have to stay firm by that. And sometimes in the world of politics, people will tell us things that are true. And when they tell us things, you know what? It's their opinion. Maybe we can take it on board sometimes. There are other times when we choose not to take it on board at all. That is ultimately our decision and our choice. But I think what concerns me is when people take it personal, when they become like a Donald Dump. Oh, I meant Donald Trump. And, you know, they start to call people names, they make fun of people, or they start unfriending people, blocking people, and that sort of thing. It's like, come on now, that's a little bit over the top. So that's concerning. Alric, good morning to you, my dear. I'm going to unmute your mic, I think. Actually, you may have to unmute it.
It's unmuted.
There you go. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Flashpoint is asking, what does Barbara have to say about assaults committed by other politicians? Well, Flashpoint, if you have watched this program, you will know that this is one of my main concerns about not just Barbara, but all women. We only have 3 in the Legislative Assembly at the moment, who have decided to not take a position on the assault that was committed by a member of the House. This is concerning for a number of different reasons. But, you know, listen, at the end of the day, if you are a woman, you are more likely to be assaulted in your life by a man than a man is. That's just the reality of the situation. And all of us, we have a silent witness march that's going to be coming up here shortly as the weather permits. But all of us have to be concerned about how women are treated in the communities that we live in. Everything from domestic violence and assault to, you know, workplace harassment, whether it's sexual harassment, racial harassment, nationality harassment, or whatever. As mothers, we're trying to strike a balance between having a work life, dedicating time to our families and being there for our children and husbands and grandparents and other people that are meaningful persons in our lives, and still support our families financially. So most women have to be working outside of the home and still carrying a load in the household as well. So when I see a situation happen where a woman is beaten and bruised, and there are people who can, by their silence, give consent to that type of behavior. And yes, in this situation, I do honestly believe that silence is consent. Silence is saying, I'm okay with this at some level. Because if you were not, you would be speaking out quite vehemently against this sort of behavior. I mean, I thought when I first heard the story that Flashpoint is referring to, which is the allegations against Speaker of the House, which he admitted, so I don't even know why we're calling them allegations anymore, that in a drunken stupor, Mr. Bush has said that he has assaulted someone. When I hear that type of a story, it concerns me immensely that women in the Legislative Assembly, in particular, who are supposed to be setting examples for other women in the community, for young girls and so on, that they themselves do not speak out about these things. I'm like, what sort of example is that? In your heart of hearts, do you not believe that this man is wrong? And I don't want to hear any mumbo jumbo about, oh, we're waiting for the legal process to take its place. Speaking out generally against domestic violence would be wonderful. You don't have to address the specifics of his case, but could you make a statement about how you feel about gender-based violence? No one has done that. And, you know, I'm going to give props because I think it's important to acknowledge when people, especially politically aligned people, are indeed doing the right thing. So we have a situation where, as you guys know, the previous representative for the Newlands area, it wasn't Newlands yet, but you know, before One Man, One Vote, Mr. Wayne Panton, he's not even in the Legislative Assembly right now. He's maintained an office here in Newlands, but he actually put up a sign at his office that said, I can't remember exactly what the sign had said, but basically it said that he stands with the victim and stands against violence against women. And when I saw that sign, I said, wow, good for him. You know, because that is an important message. So most members of the Legislative Assembly had very little to say, nothing at all. The PPM members for sure had nothing to say. The opposition, they were more vocal. Some of them, such as Mr. Ezra Miller, was trying to lead the charge to have Mr. Bush removed from office, even if it was just removed from not office, but removed from the position of Speaker of the House. Again, because that is supposed to be a respectful position, and this behavior that was engaged in is certainly not respectful towards anyone. That has not happened. He took a slight leave of absence, which was self-induced, and now he's back, and everybody's pretending like nothing has gone on. The process continues to move through the courts, and we will certainly see what happens. Good morning, Walton. Thank you so much for tuning in. So, Flashpoint, at this point, because Barbara has said nothing about this assault, and we're going into a year now, it's going to be a year come February, there would be nothing in my mind that she could say during that coming campaign section that would justify her actions today. I get that PPM, they're all towing the line. They have one message. They're refusing to speak out against Mr. Bush because the truth of the matter is that PPM would not be in power with their so-called coalition government if Mr. Bush had not brought along his team from the District of West Bay and from the CDP. So as a result of that, Alden McLaughlin has had to sell his soul to the devil. And everybody else who's part of the PPM have had to sell their soul to the devil. And that is why we see persons like Mr. Wayne Panton, who was actually part and parcel of, he was still part of the PPM. After he saw the PPM's response to this, both him and Osborne Bodden resigned as members of the party because they were still party members. Because once again, they're sending a very loud message that they cannot support that sort of thing. So Tracy says, silence kills and makes life hard. When you begin to speak out, you're hated by almost everyone. Tracy, let me put it like this, right? You might be hated by some people. And of course, the minority always seems to be incredibly vocal. I don't think that you'll be hated by everyone for speaking out because I do it every single day. And I can tell you the number of people, that total strangers that approach me on the street and they say, Sandy, I listen to you in the mornings. I go back and listen to your show. I appreciate, you bringing forth information in this community and all of the things that you do. I focus on those majority positive messages than the few naysayers who normally have a political stake and they don't want to be highlighted for not doing the right thing. And as you say, if silence kills, then what's the alternative? Would you rather someone, oh, well, I don't like you because you speak out, or people remain silent and we continue to have innocent people in our communities suffer as a result of that? So Louis has finally woken up. Louis, where were you? Maybe he was in the garden. In Detroit, he says, good morning, CMR Massive. Top of the morning to you too, Sandra. Thank you so much. Alric, tell us a little bit about your week. What have you been up to and how has it been?
Have had a good week, just helping people as usual. Just using my mornings to work, my normal work, and then using the afternoons to have meetings with constituents and people that need assistance in the community. And then the late afternoon from about 4:30 or so is spent going door to door to hear concerns in detail of other members of the community. So pretty busy, and also I always find time to watch Cayman Mall Road. So
well, we certainly appreciate the love and support. Good morning to Toshi. Good morning to Donovan, who's joining us from New York as well. Louis says it's too cold in Detroit for gardening, but he's tuned in to the hard cold truth. And look at here. Look at this. Cece has tuned into the program. Big up to our friend Cece. She's working hard on the job. Are you at work yet this morning, Cece? Maybe you're going in the afternoon shift. But Cece is joining us, and shout out to her. And of course, big shout out to all of our folks there in Windsor Park, GTC, Little Cayman Brac, and all over the 3 Cayman Islands. Good morning, Odette. And of course, Sai is now here for it. And we appreciate the love and support. So Alric, it sounds like you've been pretty busy. Obviously right now, managing your time in terms of working the job that actually pays the bills and going out there in the community, finding the time to meet with constituents and to also, today's her day off. Hey, Cece, kick up your feet, girl. Get yourself a hot cup of tea or coffee and just relax a little bit. So finding the time to balance your regular job, because as you have said, you are an attorney, and I think that's primarily you do director services, that sort of thing. And also, going out, doing his door-to-door walks and so on. One day we're going to follow you out in the neighborhood to kind of get a feel for what that process is like. Now, who was it that said, Tracy was saying, Alric, how difficult it can be once you decide to speak out. And I know that one of the most difficult decisions you can make is the decision to run for public office. It's not a popular one, especially if you're not part of an elite group of individuals, such as the PPM party. How have you found people's response to you thus far? What has it been like doing the door-to-door rounds? I always tell people in this process, you're going to make friends and you're going to lose friends. But what have you personally found the lay of the land to be thus far?
People have said they haven't seen their representative in a while. They are anxious to talk about issues, both in their community and national issues that affect Caymanians in general. And people are very happy to have someone come around, which is what I'm doing now, is going door to door. They just want someone to talk to. And I guess we all know what that's like in a system that seems to put a lot of fear into you for speaking out. Certainly when people see me, they're happy for the opportunity to speak out, to speak to someone, to speak the truth that's on their mind. So what I have done is I have noted all the concerns in various communities as I go, and then I try to take steps to resolve those concerns. Because I think we need to have a government of action and clearly not just talk. We need to have a government of good governance. Need to have a government of enforcement, and not just enforcement of people who aren't friends with the government, because we tend to see that happen from time to time where people are treated differently in different circumstances. But I would say overall, people are very happy to have someone just sit and talk with them and genuinely spend some time with them and hear what they have to say and offer up resolutions for various concerns. So that's what I've been doing, because I want to be a public servant to serve the people. So it's not about my selfish interests or what I can gain from the situation. It's about listening to the people. So that's why I spend so much of my time every day just listening to people and then trying to assist them with a resolution that could make their life better. When your viewer talks about silence, it's unfortunate that we have a government that says anything that comes from somewhere else is fake news. If it's from Mall Road, it's fake news. If it's a non-governmental source, for some reason, it's all fake news. So I think that's one of the things that makes people afraid to speak up, because they think they're going to get beat down for saying anything, even if it's true, if it's facts related to a specific matter. And also, people feel like they don't have a lot of support. When I say people, I mean Caymanians don't feel that they don't have a lot of support when they speak out, because they will get criticized on all sides. But what I would say to everyone is, under the Constitution, you do have a right to freedom of speech. So you should exercise that right every day and every chance you get. So that's one of the issues that I think that we face in the country is people don't understand what their rights are. They don't understand the processes. They don't understand the steps that they need to take in order to be heard properly. And that's sort of one of the things that I wanted to go through today when we talk about the Legal Services Bill, because you mentioned Smith-Barker earlier. And as you know, you did that long interview with me talking about the issues regarding Smith-Barker and prior to the protest at the beach. And as you know, the government eventually backed down and said they weren't going to proceed with the Smith-Barker redevelopment project. However, even though the government backed down, I still did an FOI, a Freedom of Information request, both to the planning department and to the cabinet. The reason I did that is we have to understand that just because the government says that something is not going to proceed and they want our attention to move away from that topic, we have to look at what was a process that governed what took place. Was there a committee in place? How was that committee formed? So I'll be getting back to you on another show to talk about the governance process and the things that were involved and the whole Smith-Barker thing in the background. And I'll also come on another show to talk about the sort of appeals process that I'm going through now to obtain some of the records to evidence some of our suspicions regarding Smith-Barker. So Smith-Barker is an ongoing issue because we have to look at how things were dealt with. Not just the fact that the government says it's not going on anymore, but how it was dealt with. And this is the same approach I want to take with the Legal Services Bill. So that sort of everyone knows, the Legal Services Bill was renamed. The previous name was the Legal Practitioners Bill. And years ago, the Legal Practitioners Bill was very controversial. The reason it was controversial is because the Legal Services Bill is meant to set up a board to regulate the legal profession and provide a system of legal training for lawyers. So when you think about the process of becoming a lawyer, number one, you usually go to university, you get your degree, or you take an alternative route if you have a prior degree, which is what they call a fast track. After you finish your relevant courses, you do a professional exam. Once you do a professional exam, you do a period of training. And in Cayman, it's called articles. So when we mention articles later, we're referring to the training of persons to qualify as lawyers in Cayman. So after your training is finished, you go to court, and the court says you're formally a lawyer. Your name is then put on a list of lawyers, and then you're officially a lawyer. You can work. Your next step, of course, for most lawyers is they want to work hard for a number of years. They want to become partner. And as a partner, you make the big bucks. So you can be a salaried partner where you have a fixed salary, or you can be a profit sharing partner where you share a portion of the profits. So we're talking about people who are profit sharing partners who could easily take home, $10 million in bonus in a year. So it's very profitable to become a profit sharing partner. And the previous legal practitioners bill failed because Caymanian said, listen, I grew up here. I did what I was supposed to do. I went to study. I came back with a degree, and it's high honors. And I just like to be treated fairly. And Caymanian started to say, well, how many Caymanians do we have that are actual partners in these firms? And not only just partners, but how many are sharing in the profits? And Caymanians were basically asking for a level playing field where the rules were clear. They weren't asking for a handout. They were just asking for a level playing field to make sure that it was a case that they had access to a good quality level of work. They had contact with the clients. They could do marketing. They could go overseas and meet the clients. They can make a good contribution to their firm. And there was a discussion that there should be a minimum percentage of Caymanians who are in a law firm. And the reason behind this is that if you are sincere about growing the number of Caymanians in your firm, then ideally what you should do is you should load the bases with as many Caymanians as possible, so that in the future, when you spend all this money, all this investment and time into a Caymanian, and that Caymanian rises, the idea is that you will have a lot of Caymanians who go from this level to this level, and those people should be partners. However, over the years, we've only seen a small number of Caymanians become partners. And on the other hand, what we've seen is we've seen a lot of overseas lawyers come into Cayman and become partners very quickly. And there's really no difference between the overseas lawyer and the Caymanian lawyer. In fact, I would argue that the Caymanian lawyer has more relevant experience than the overseas lawyer, because when overseas lawyer gets to Cayman, he usually has no background in the type of law that is practiced here. For example, investment funds, a popular practice area. And there are a lot of lawyers who come here to Cayman for the first time to work, and they've never done investment funds law. And so they do have to spend time learning about investment funds and becoming competent. And that process usually takes about 12 months to start to get comfortable. When you compare that to a Caymanian who's actually in Cayman, practicing investment funds law on a day-to-day basis, that Caymanian actually has more relevant experience. So logically, you would expect that you would look at the person that has more relevant experience. But often it's the case that the Caymanian lawyers are told, well, you're not ready yet. Or, well, how many clients have you actually brought in? And the issue is, you're going to ask someone how many clients they brought in, but you're not going to give them the opportunity to meet the client or do the marketing with the client overseas. So what we want to look at is, the process of becoming a lawyer. We want to look at the governing body for all the lawyers, like who regulates all the lawyers. And the Legal Services Bill tackles all of these things. And I think, Sandy, we might have to have 2 shows on this. So, because what you want to do is, we want to ensure that all of Cayman understands in a plain English language sense what the upcoming Legal Services Bill says, how it impacts Caymanian lawyers, and how it may be possible that if this is passed in its current form, how that could be applied to other industries. So control of other industries by certain groups, if it is allowed to just pass in the way that it's drafted.
Okay, so just a second here, Alric. We've got Cece who says, I will always respect Alric. He's truly for his people and the best interest at heart for our island. He doesn't just talk, he backs that up with action. Linda says, all true, Alric, in accounting too, not just law. So one interesting point before we get to Bruce's comment that Alric has made, because I think a lot of people, Alric, have this false idea in their head that when they hear as lawyers, you're talking about some of the issues that the Caymanian lawyers are facing, they think to themselves, well, who cares? These people are millionaires, they make all sorts of money. They're at the top of the feeding chain. They're like the sharks of, the professional world. So why are we going to bend over backwards to protect them? They have the resources and means to protect themselves. We will certainly be talking about how that isn't necessarily true. But in addition to that not necessarily being true, we also, and you've just mentioned this, and Linda gets the point as well, that there is very much a trickle-down effect that happens as they continue to chip away at different aspects of who we are as Caymanians. So for example, we see the farmers market, they're having a fight on their hands. We see the fishermen having a fight on their hands. Those are as equally important as the fact that the lawyers and the accountants, the professionals, are also having a fight in their hands. And I'm always surprised when people say to me, well, they're more concerned about the fishermen than the lawyers. And I say, the way I see it is if they can go after the professionals who may have access to resources, who may be able to file lawsuits and so on, if they're willing to go after those professions and those individuals, then the question becomes, where will they stop? No one will have any protections and no one will have any rights in this country. So I do think it is very much a slippery slope. And, people need to be very, very much concerned about this issue. So I'm glad that you've said that. And I'm glad that Linda has acknowledged that, yes, in the context of the Legal Services Bill, we'll be talking about the attorneys, but it is not just the attorneys. This fight is for all Caymanians. This fight is about equality in the workplace and trying to implement not just equality, but trying to implement measures that actually take into consideration that Caymanians who are indeed born in this country should have first preference to training opportunities, etc., especially when they already have the education, they've got the knowledge base, as opposed to persons who you're willing to bring in and train and promote ahead of your own Caymanians. So Bruce says, I asked the political candidate that represents the PPM how they would vote if they get elected, and there's a major issue that arises that is not on the party manifesto, where their constituents' position differs significantly from the government. The person said that they would vote with the government. This is one of the problems of party politics. I'm not sure that party politics is 100% compatible with representational democracy. Well, Bruce, what I will say in terms of that I have seen instances where politicians have said, Tara Rivers did this, for example. Politicians have said that they're going to vote the party line. They're going to toe the party line because they have collective responsibility. That's the excuse that they use. Yes, we have collective responsibility. Well, isn't that amazing how they can have collective responsibility? But on topics such as same-sex or the domestic partnership bill or the civil partnership bill, they pulled rank. There were quite a few members of the government who did not vote with the government on this and who did not support it. It would have passed had they. So when they tell you that, Bruce, they're talking out of both holes, both ends of their mouth and the other hole, because it just doesn't make any logical sense. And we've actually seen examples of where they have chosen to break with the government on issues that they obviously felt very passionate about. So I think, especially in a country as small as the Cayman Islands and the legislature as small as we have with 18 representatives, the truth of the matter is we should all be encouraging our representatives to vote their conscience and do the thing that is in the best interest of the people, not along party lines. So what determines whether they will vote against, with party lines or not? It seems to be a very slippery slope. So Louis says, Alric, I'm praying for your focus, that God remains in protection of your heart and gives you the strength to fight the good fight. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Louis. He also shares that collective responsibility, but personal paychecks. Do your job. Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to go back to what one of your viewers said, that accountants, that the issue applies to accountants too. So hiring, training, and promotion. What I would say in the accounting area is that we see more evidence of Caymanians becoming partners rather than simply giving status to lawyers to become Caymanian. So we have several people like Sean Parchment of Price Waterhouse, who's a partner. And we can look at all of the firms and we can actually point to someone who's Caymanian who became a partner. Now, when you look at the law firms, there are very few of that type of situation where Caymanians are really enjoying a similar salary level as his foreign counterpart. And I think the reason that there's a difference is that we have to look at what systems govern the professions. Why is it important to look at the systems that govern the professions? Because that is what determines the outcome. That is what determines how much control someone has over you or a firm has over you. And that determines if you're actually able to complain. So if we look at the legal services bill, for example, we look at what they're going to call a legal services board. So the legal services board under this draft bill it consists of a judge, the attorney general, a person who's a non-practicing lawyer appointed by the premier, another person who's a non-practicing lawyer appointed by the leader of the opposition. So the first observation is this. This is the board who is going to govern, who's going to regulate the legal profession and say who's guilty of misconduct, et cetera, et cetera. If the board consists of someone appointed by the premier, someone appointed by the leader of opposition, that alone means that 2 out of 4 people on that board is a political appointment. What do we know about political appointments? These persons can be influenced by the persons who are appointing them. Uh-huh. They might feel obligated to follow the directions of the premier, or they might feel obligated to follow the directions of the leader of opposition, when in fact, they should be considering the best interests of the legal profession, the reputation of the Cayman Islands, and the best interests of Caymanian lawyers as well. In addition, when you consider that the Attorney General is contemplated to be part of the board that regulates the legal profession, we have to remember that the Attorney General sits on the side of the government. So remember we mentioned earlier that we have 2 out of 4 people of the board that are political appointees. Well, if you consider that the Attorney General also sits on the side of the government, that means that you now have 3 out of 4 persons appointed to the board that are on the side of the government. Why is this troubling? Troubling because it introduces a level of uncertainty, unfairness, and treatment. If you think about, let's say you went ahead and went past your law degree, Sandra, and you qualified as an attorney. And let's say you were subject to regulation by this board. And let's say something went wrong and you had to file a lawsuit. Think about this for a second. You have to file a lawsuit. However, the Attorney General is a member of the board, and a judge is also a member of the board. So if you want to file a lawsuit against this board, and now you have to go to court, now you're going up against a person who might have done you wrong, and they're the judge in court, or they're the person on the other side who's prosecuting. So it introduces a serious level of what I would say awkwardness. If you take action as an attorney against the government, and the proceedings are there in court, and then the judge is there, and you then get the feeling like something is not right with the constitution of the board. So in my view, we shouldn't have any member of a board that's regulated by legal profession that is appointed, that can be appointed and removed by the or appointed and removed by the leader of opposition. And none of those members should be a sitting judge. And that is what's proposed by Legal Services Bill, that we have a sitting judge that is on the board that is regulating the profession. Now, we don't want to talk about problems only. So let's talk about some of the solutions. As a solution, I think that the membership of the Legal Services Board must not have any conflicts of interest with the court, with politics, or the rest of the judicial system. I believe, as a suggestion, I would want to see someone like the Auditor General on the Legal Services Board, because the Auditor General is meant to be independent and can reach an independent judgment. I would like to see someone from the Anti-Fraud Commission sitting on the Legal Services Board. A third person I would like to see is perhaps the chairman of the Standards in Public Life. I might like to see a law professor, maybe a retired law professor, sitting on that Legal Services Board. And then the reason I'm suggesting this is, when you think about who's governing you, you want to make sure that you have a fair process in place. And with the Legal Services Board, what is proposed in the Legal Services Bill, there are too many possible conflicts of interest. There are too many parties that can be controlled by the government, by the opposition, and the premier. And while the persons appointed might be good people, they may be so grateful for that appointment that they just simply follow the instructions of the persons who appointed them, rather than making sure that a transparent, fair result is achieved for attorneys. The other issue with the Legal Services Board is that it basically says that when they have meetings, the person who's the judge on the board, that person will be the chairman of the meeting. Why is this important? Because the Legal Services Bill says that there are four members of the board, and if 2 agree and 2 disagree, the judge, the chairman, has a second or extra vote. What I propose is that instead of a person who's a judge having a second or extra vote, I think you should just have an uneven number of members of the board, and the situation is solved. So you don't have one person with an extra vote. What you have is 5 people or 7 people sitting on a board, so that you're always going to end up in a situation whether the answer is a clear yes or it's a clear no. In the current circumstances, the board is proposed to have only 4 people. And if there's a deadlock, 2 on one side and 2 on the other side, the chairman has a second vote. I think we need to avoid situations like that, because you never know. The chairman may have his own personal view, which is maybe deemed unfair or biased towards a particular attorney. So to avoid that whole situation, we can remove this idea that a chairman has a second or casting vote. We need to change the composition of the board from 4 people to 5 people. So we always have a situation where there's a clear yes or no.
Okay, so Alric, one of the issues you're saying then with the legal services bill is the makeup of this board that is being proposed, the persons who are actually on the board, the numbers, and the potential that those persons who are currently proposed to, make up this board would almost all be conflicted in a variety of different ways, whether it's because it's a political appointment, judges who may end up, and I take your point about judges because just this past week, I saw in real terms how that works when people have to recuse themselves from hearing a matter because they know the individual or whatever. You end up having to wait 4 months down the line to see if you can even get your matter heard, because the court only has so many judges available and so many magistrates available. So this is a real practical issue that, and for attorneys who are practicing day in and day out and who are standing up before judges, if there was some sort of a conflict that arose out of this board or board decision, you could see how it would then be questioned whether or not someone could hear their matters, even if it wasn't directly about them. But how far does it extend? How impartial can or cannot be? Flashpoint wants to know, why is Alden not doing everything he can to protect local attorneys? Now, this is an interesting question about the premier, because everyone assumes that the premier, who himself is a attorney at law, I'm assuming he's still, an attorney. He's kept up himself on the rolls or whatever you officially call it. There is the assumption that Caymanian attorneys look out for each other. And I want to talk about this. I know this is not directly related to the legal services bill, but it is. This assumption that Caymanians have each other's back, whether it's in the accounting profession, the legal profession, or anywhere else, is one that unfortunately is really flawed. Alric, address for us, in your opinion, why is that assumption flawed? Why are there certain Caymanians, whether it's Alden, McLaughlin, or otherwise, who are not protective of other people in their respective professions as we would expect them to be? We're talking here about big money. We're talking here about special interests. We're talking here about Caymanian attorneys or people even in the accounting profession who are afraid of speaking up, because if they do so, that means that professionally, as Tracy mentioned earlier, people are afraid if they speak out professionally, they are signing their own death warrant. Tell us what you know about those situations.
Well, you have reason for concern, and the rest of the public has reason for concern, because if you have lawyers who help and represent members of the public on a daily basis, represent small business on a daily basis, and these same persons who are representing you in court and trying to protect your interests, if they're in a position where they themselves are afraid of the consequences of speaking out in their own profession for their own interests, we have a problem. Like they say, Houston, we have a problem. So when we talk about Caymanians supporting each other in the legal profession, what normally happens is some people buy into the idea. If someone keeps telling you, you're unattractive, you're unattractive, you're unattractive. If they keep saying it, sometimes you might believe it. So some people may tell you, you know what, you're different from that other Caymanian, because that other Caymanian, he likes to complain. But you know what? The Caymanian is not complaining just for the sake of making a complaint. The Caymanian is complaining because of the process, of the system that's in place that allows that person to get good training, get considered for the next level promotion, whether that is as a senior associate or as a salary partner, we get a fixed salary, or as an equity partner or profit sharing partner, we get share of the profits. So what tends to happen is it's called divide and conquer. So you pay a couple Caymanians a decent salary, and lawyer salaries are pretty good, and especially with the big firms. So, you're talking about people who years ago, at least when I was working with a big firm years ago, 10 years ago, I remember people coming in from overseas who really didn't have that much experience, and they were starting out around 20 to 25,000 a month. So that's kind of money you can make in some of these big firms. But so let's take a step back. So that's why people don't feel sorry for lawyers, because of the kind of money that they can make in some of the bigger firms. So you're talking about 20 to 25,000 being the starting salary of an overseas person coming to work for a big firm. That is not the case when it comes to Caymanian lawyers with the same experience. Caymanian lawyers with the same experience may earn less than that. But the point we're actually making now is that even though Caymanian lawyers are making less than their foreign counterpart, the Caymanian lawyer says, you know what, I'm good. I'm making money. I'm making more money than a lot of other Caymanians. So I'm good. So the Caymanian lawyer is usually only concerned about, I'm making more money than other Caymanians generally. So I'm good. The Caymanian lawyer doesn't think, listen, I should be treated fairly. I should get the equivalent salary as my foreign counterpart. I should ensure that there's a system, there's a process that allows me to be treated fairly, that recognizes my skills, that recognizes my qualifications, and doesn't just push them aside, and doesn't just give a bunch of excuses that say, oh, you're not ready yet, or you haven't done this, or you haven't done that. So to answer your question, there are some Caymanian lawyers who will not stand by your side in protest because they feel that the money that they're making is good compared to other Caymanians across other industries. So therefore they don't complain, and they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to lose the nice salary that they're getting, that they can get a nice home, they can get a nice car, they can take nice trips, they can buy nice clothing. But we as Caymanians need to move beyond this, beyond things just looking nice. Things must actually be nice. And for them to actually be nice, we need to make sure that there are proper legislation in place, there are proper processes in place, and these things are actually enforced. The only guarantee to enforcement is to having people who have the will to enforce the law, and also having people who have the courage to put things in the law that actually protect Caymanian lawyers. So hopefully that answers your question about why some Caymanian lawyers simply don't support others. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, Alric, it does. And I just want to make sure that the people understand what precisely has been said. So basically, I think that as Caymanians, even those in the legal profession, are setting the bar very low for themselves, in other words. So they're willing to accept sometimes 50% or less of what their foreign counterparts are making professionally, because they think that that's all that they're worth, and they don't know their value. They don't even know how to properly negotiate. This reminds me of a young lady. She's actually American, but now she has Cayman status. She was working for a local company. She left and went overseas, and at some point they wanted to recruit her back to return because they saw a decline in their sales as a result of her departure. Now, when she left, she became very much aware of how, as a woman, as someone who now had Caymanian status, how she was being treated differently than her counterparts who were all men, offered all sorts of wonderful contracts, bonuses, this, that, and the other thing. So she said, you know what? She played hardball when it was time for her to return. And she said, yes, I'm aware that this person who's in the same job as me is getting all these benefits, is getting this salary, this bonus, yada, yada, yada. I'll be happy to return if I get equality in my contract. And eventually that particular company caved in and gave her the equal contract because they really wanted to get her back. But I think there's something to be said for those of us who do not appreciate the value of our worth. I see it all the time, even in the DPP's office. There are Caymanians who are in that office, in the legal department, which are the government agencies that would hire attorneys, and they sit down, or legal drafting and whatever, and they sit down and they're treated like second-class citizens. They're not given opportunities. They're not promoted. They're not making the same money. And they just sit there and accept it because I guess they don't think that they deserve any better. I mean, I cannot tell you the horror stories that I've heard coming out of the DPP's office about how Caymanians are treated and how, you know, some of the cases that they're given, they're not even given an opportunity to try to prove themselves. And then Johnny come lately from Jamaica, Canada, the UK, wherever, is quickly promoted up the ranks and given every opportunity to shine and to get these cases where they hire QCs to do it anyway, but you know their name is kind of on the case to handle. So Hans, hopefully Flashpoint, that answers your question. I think just because someone like the Premier is in a profession, that does not in and of itself means he cares about other people in that profession. Maybe his experience has been different. Maybe he has not had to struggle as much as others to get where he was. Because remember, when he left, he was a partner in his own law firm. It was a small law firm, but nonetheless, he was a partner. Now, the Premier has had both his wife and his son been called to the bar as attorneys at law. It does not appear that they had any problems or issues getting articles, whereas other Caymanians go for years and are unable to get articles, and they have done equally as well academically, etc. But they just don't have either the right connections, or they're too vocal. Heaven forbid that you should be an attorney that's vocal, or whatever. They will never get an opportunity to do articles in this country. Kathy Wilkes is one of those people, folks, who has completed her law degree and should be given an opportunity to do articles. She's working for the legal drafters department. And, you know, despite promises to give her articles, that has not come to fruition. So Mr. Walton has chimed in and said, Louis, collective responsibility is the conversation whereby individual members are held accountable for the actions and decisions of the body of which they are a member. As an individual, you are to put your view during open discussion. Should you fail to get the majority to agree and go along with you, then you become bound to go along or accept the decision of the majority. Well, you can accept the decision of the majority because that is a democratic process, as we rightfully see. However, I don't think you have to go along with the majority. You can be the sole voice out there that says this is wrong. You can be a dissenting voice. So Walton says this is how all boards should work. I don't agree with that. If there is a decision being put forward, but it's like going to court. If it's a panel of 3 judges, of 5 judges, whether it's the Supreme Court, the appeals court, whatever, the Privy Council, judges dissent. They can say, I do not agree. And here is why I do not agree. Likewise, politicians have the exact same right to say, I do not agree with what this government is proposing. This is not in the best interest of the people, or whatever reasons you don't agree, simply put it out there. And there you have it. People will know where you stand on this particular issue. If you just sit back and go along in order to get along, as Danica said yesterday in her comments, Joe Biden supported a bill that is said to have marginalized African Americans. Maybe he was just going along with the party. Maybe he didn't even support that bill personally, but this is what happens when you find yourself in that position where you're not able to stand up with your own backbone and stand up tall and stand up straight for whatever it is that you actually believe in. So Hans says, when will Alden start to look out for young Caymanians and have a company? It is unfair to see the same company getting contracts over us as Caymanian business owners. Tired of it also, and they know me. I have reached out to most of them, but no reply. Well, I'm not surprised, Hans, that you've received no reply. You were considered very fortunate if the premier ever responds to you. I used to think it was just me. And I kind of took it personal, like he just ignores my questions or my WhatsApp messages, whatever. But I have come to learn over the years that you shouldn't take it personal. Apparently, he treats everyone with equal disdain, and he's unlikely to respond to your messages. That's just how the premier is. And I think a lot of politicians are like that, unfortunately. I must say that there's a few, even within the PPM ranks, that will respond to you, but the premier isn't one of them. So, Alric, there's a more general question here. And of course, as a political candidate, let's talk about some of these generalities that are happening at Caymanian businesses, small Caymanian businesses who are not given contracts. We're going to be talking about one of those. His name is Odell Suarez. And Odell Suarez, during the pandemic, has been offering his accounting services to other Caymanian businesses who are trying to get up and running and get, access to government funds, whether it's a grant or a loan or whatever. And the CIBB, the Cayman Islands Development Bank, has continually put obstacles in Odell's way for him to be able to assist people with their applications. And they've not, he's sent emails, asked them questions, the whole 9 yards, and they have not been forthcoming with even responding to his emails so that he could be better equipped to assist people. Alric, what is your view on government trying to give preferential treatment to certain companies, whether it's government contracts, government work, or whatever?
Yeah, it's common, not just in Cayman, but in other countries, where if you support the ruling party, you are considered a friend of government, and therefore you start to get awarded the contracts, the majority of the contracts. And obviously, under the Freedom of Information law, the government's going to say those contracts are commercial sensitive information, and we can't see what the terms are. So they may not be terms that are even favorable to the government. And I totally agree with Hans that, we have a situation where there are a lot of talented Caymanian businessmen and businesswomen out there who have skills. They're working hard. They have families and expenses just like everyone else in the economy. Everyone else is coming in here that has expenses. Caymanians have a CUC bill too. That small businessman has a family too that he has to feed. Has a daughter or a son that has to go to school and has to give them lunch money. So we need to change the way that these contracts are awarded and try to think about, we must think about ensuring that more small businesses get a piece of the pie. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why, I'm aligning myself with people like, Kathy Ann Ebanks Wilkes, who's an attorney, who's she's finished her studies, but next step is to become an attorney. And, that's also someone that works very hard and, has high goals and wants to achieve. And I think she would share my view that if we don't take care of our own Caymanians and consider helping a majority of them, giving a majority of them an opportunity to participate in the economy, if we don't help them, who's going to help them? That's one of my motivations for wanting to be involved in politics is not a power, it's not a position, is to be involved in policy making and having a proper system in place that ensure that Caymanians get treated fairly when it comes to distribution of some of these contracts. I don't believe that small business is getting enough of these contracts. I believe that a lot of these contracts are just going to one person over and over, or one particular group of people. What we need to do is to just have a fair process and make sure that more Caymanians are involved, because if you do not involve small business, and small business is always struggling, small business fails, what's going to happen next? The owner of that business has to then rely on the government in terms of welfare, needs assessment unit. So by helping small business, you're actually helping your economy, your overall economy, and you're helping people to stay off welfare. You have to ask the question, if the government is not involved in small business more, in awarding contracts more contracts to small business, then is it their intention for those small businesses to continue to struggle and rely on the government, on welfare? And it is true that there are some cases where presentations are made to small business. Here's an opportunity for you for a loan or a grant. But when you go get that grant or that loan, you might get told things like, well, you gotta have 150% collateral to back up this loan, right? Well, the thing is, how are you gonna tell a small business that they need to have, $1 million in assets in order to get a grant? That doesn't make sense. If you genuinely wanted to help a small business, then you just would. You would make sure they get the contracts that they're competent to do. I think there are a lot of small businesses like Hans and Ricardo Kelly out there who can provide excellent services, but they just don't have the opportunity. And asking for a handout, they're just asking for the opportunity to showcase their skills and do a good job. And listen, if the person doesn't do their job, then you just don't use them again. It's that simple. But I'm very confident that there are a lot of Caymanians who are very skilled, but just don't have the opportunity.
Let's talk about, you mentioned Kathy Wilkes, and, she's obviously running for West Bay Central, I believe it is, against Captain Eugene. There's a few others who are coming out, and there's been this criticism I do hear every single election now. I am very pleased when I see professionals who have a lot to risk and a lot to lose. There's a lot at risk, I should say, and a lot to potentially lose, getting involved in the political process. And you have just said to us that one of the reasons why, or the primary reason why you're keen to get involved, is to be able to shape and mold policy that would be more beneficial to the average Caymanian. There's been criticisms of people before you, of yourself and of others, that, oh, you're just doing this for a quick paycheck for the money. Let's address this very important point, because obviously we have seen people who are way less qualified than you, who technically at the time that they were running for public office didn't even have a job. So they went from zero income to making probably $8,000 a month or whatever the going MLA salary is. But when people say that to you, do you find that you're insulted as a professional, as a doubly qualified professional, someone who is both a CPA and an attorney at law? How do you address, without getting into your financial business, so to speak, but how do you address people like that when they don't know anything about your finances, but they assume that you're jumping into the political arena because you're motivated by the salary?
Well, if I was motivated by the salary, I would have joined, 20 years ago. But I think the type of work that is involved in being a public servant, you're giving up family time. So if you have children, if you have a wife, you're actually giving up a lot of that time in order to serve your country. So I can tell you on my day-to-day, I generally don't have any time. I'm always trying to help someone who's in need, and not just helping in terms of providing them with an item. It's not that. It's actually showing them the way and helping to remind them that they have a value. I think that's something that we need to just continue preaching to our fellow Caymanians, that you have a value. And that is my goal on a daily basis, is to remind people, I say, listen, I see you have these skills in your resume. Let me forward your resume to a couple of my friends to see, if they have an opening for you. And if they have an opening, then I introduce them, to my friend or other colleague. That puts them in a position that they can then take care of themselves. And in my situation, I'm definitely not in it, for that political salary. And during my time, I intend to donate a portion of that salary to charity, of course, because this is something that I've always done, is to donate to charity. And I met a lot of good people through charity. So that is something that I will continue to do. I'm more motivated to help my fellow Caymanian than to get $1. I think the day that I feel a motivation for $1 over my fellow Caymanian, then that's the day to stop doing what I'm doing. So definitely, I'm not in this for, what some people say is a great salary. Definitely not in it for that. Like I say, I'm happy to donate a portion of that to charity. And from, I've worked with, big law firms, and so I'm familiar of what, I'm able to make in those type of firms, and I was in those firms. So the salary in those firms is much more attractive salary as a government representative. So my point is that my choice is to be a public servant. My choice is to help the people. It's not to chase after, dollars. So definitely, my goal is to be there as a public servant for the people, helping in any way I can. And for me, it's not about the paycheck, although I will work hard to earn every dollar that I am paid as a representative.
Right. I think the bottom line is, a lot of people probably don't realize that what you do now, you make way more money than you would as a politician. And so, some people might think, well, maybe there's additional perks or benefits, but like you said, it really depends on how you look at it, because if you are truly working for that money, it's not necessarily, it's a decent salary, but it's better if you're working for it, for sure. But there are other sacrifices that you will have to make along the way as well, including always having your life open to other people to comment on and to give their opinion on about every single decision that you make, or every single thing that you do or don't do. And, the world of politics isn't for the faint of heart, that's for sure. It's a very, very interesting profession.
Yeah.
So, Alric, we've only really scratched the surface of the legal services bill. I know that sometimes with discussions like this, you've got to break it down into bite-sized pieces. Perhaps we can have you on again because we know that this bill will be coming in December, in the December session of the legislature. And so perhaps we can have you back again to delve into a little bit more detail in terms of some of the other areas that are actually causing you to be concerned about the legal services bill. Now, someone said to me earlier this week that in their opinion, the legal services bill that is proposed now is even more watered down in terms of protection for Caymanian attorneys, and is even less beneficial to Caymanian attorneys than the previously proposed legal practitioners bill, which, as you said, this is its equivalent replacement. What are your general thoughts on that? Have you compared what was proposed before versus now? And do you think that as we progress with each suggested bill, it becomes worse and worse, essentially, is what this person has said?
Well, there have been so many versions of the bill over the years, especially when it was called Legal Practitioners Bill. We had a version that the Association of Lawyers had. We had a version that the government had. So there's been so many versions, and the reason that the previous versions didn't pass is because the Caymanian lawyers simply felt that they weren't in the best interest of Caymanians. And if we just look at one or two things here, I can show you why. So one part of the law, one part of this legal services bill says here, a person practicing Cayman law. Well, a person can practice law in another jurisdiction, and he can actually prepare Cayman legal documents without having a Cayman legal practice certificate, as long as there's a Cayman firm signing off. So we have a situation where some random guy could be overseas preparing Cayman legal documents, and he wants to make some money off of Cayman law. So what he does is he said, well, I don't have a Cayman legal practice certificate, but because the legal services bill say I can prepare a document that's governed by Cayman law, as long as a Cayman lawyer signs off, then this is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to hook up with a Cayman lawyer, and him and I will just split the fees. So you have a situation where this arrangement actually takes work away from Cayman-based lawyers. It means that a New York law firm can prepare Cayman legal documents, charge the bulk of the fees to the client, and then have the Cayman firm sign off on the documents as if the Cayman firm prepared the documents. So my opinion in this area is that only holders of Cayman legal practice certificates should prepare those Cayman legal documents. And this is actually stated in the legal services bill, that a person who is overseas can prepare the documents and not have a Cayman legal practice certificate, and then have it signed off by a Cayman lawyer. So we need to avoid situations like that, because a Caymanian could have been preparing those documents all that time. And one of the next things that is so controversial is the legal services bill talks about an attorney can only practice Cayman law if he or she holds a Cayman Islands legal practice certificate. This is so awkward, because if the legal services bill is saying now that you have to have a Cayman legal practice certificate to practice Cayman Islands law, why is it that the government has been discussing in previous debates the fact that there are persons who are currently practicing Cayman Islands law outside the Cayman Islands without a Cayman legal practice certificate, and they're not being punished? So it doesn't make sense to me that the legal services bill, it wants to say that you can't practice Cayman law without a legal practice certificate from Cayman. But the fact is that it's currently happening with no consequence. So what is the guarantee that this wording is now placed in the law to say that you can't practice Cayman law without a Cayman practice certificate? If you put that in the law now, what difference does it make? Because we have a culture of no enforcement. So the government has been aware for many years, and they can identify the persons. They can actually point to them. You are practicing Cayman Islands law overseas without a Cayman Islands legal practice certificate. And so these are one of the questions that we must ask. These people have never paid any fees to the Cayman Islands government. And so the question has to be asked, should we be asking those persons to pay a lump sum or a lump sum fine to the Cayman Islands government in order to make up for all those years, 10 years, 20 years of practicing Cayman Islands law without a legal practice certificate? So will the government continue to turn a blind eye to this practice, pass the legal services bill into law, and subsequently issue Cayman Islands legal practice certificates to all of these persons who are basically doing a bad act? I say it's a bad act because they're actually practicing Cayman Islands law without a Cayman Islands legal practice certificate. But they're not being punished for it. They're not being asked to pay a lump sum. They're not being asked to pay any fine. What the government proposes to do is to pass the bill in the dark of night on 31st of December when we're not paying attention, and to then issue Cayman Islands legal practice certificates to all of these people overseas who are currently practicing without it. It doesn't make sense to me that the government is turning a blind eye to what's actually happening. I suggest that the government request a lump sum be paid to the government to cover the decades of practice of Cayman Islands law by these persons without a Cayman Islands legal practice certificate, because they benefited economically for decades practicing Cayman Islands law without a Cayman Islands legal practice certificate. A Caymanian can never do that. A Caymanian can never practice Cayman law without a Cayman Islands legal practice certificate. So why is it being permitted overseas currently? And why is it that they want to pass the law in the dark of night to make it okay, to make all those bad acts okay? And this has been so controversial, and it's one of the reasons why it was so hard to pass the previous versions of the bill. When we talk about how many Caymanians can be in a certain law firm, this legal services bill in its current draft, and I'm sort of reading off of it here, it talks about if you're a sole practitioner, then you must be a Caymanian. But then it goes on to say, if it's a big law firm practicing Cayman law, you only need one partner that's Caymanian. Now that's troubling to me, because this whole system needs to be at different levels. They need to say, for example, they need to say if let's say level one is a law firm with 5 or less attorneys, then what you should say is a law firm with 5 or less attorneys should have at least one Caymanian partner, and at least one of those people should be a profit sharing partner. Mm-hmm. Level 2
now, explain to us, just in case our listeners don't know the difference between a profit sharing or equitable partner versus a salaried partner. Just explain the difference to us.
So for most lawyers, the goal is to become a partner. And when you're a partner, you're the woman or the man who has influence on the direction of the firm, over decisions being made or policies being made. So as a partner, you're sort of the big dog now. But there are 2 different types of partners, generally speaking. There's one partner who might make a fixed salary, and he or she is called a salary partner. And so that person could make $1 million a year as a fixed salary. However, when you're an equity partner, you share in the profits. So when you think about the money that an equity partner could make in a big firm, what you're talking about is someone who can make a bonus of $10 million in a particular year. So the difference between a solid partner and an equity partner is so great. And the point that we always making is that we don't frequently have Caymanians who become equity partners. We don't have a lot of Caymanians who become equity partners, but we have a lot of foreign lawyers who become Caymanian and become equity partners. And that distinction has to be made because there is no difference between the competitiveness, the level of hard work, the ability to gain clients between a Caymanian and an overseas lawyer. There's really no difference. In my view, the Caymanian is more than capable to do the work that his counterpart, his foreign counterpart is doing. I just think that the Caymanian lawyers are not being provided with the proper quality of work, and they're not being pushed in the way that their foreign counterpart is being pushed. Now, some of the firms may argue, we spend $1,000 every year on training. Firms do spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on training on Caymanians who are going to school, who have come back to work. But the issue is the system that is in place to encourage promotion of those Caymanian lawyers. So what we find is that the people who are just learning Cayman law and who get the support, who come from overseas, they tend to be pushed into the equity partner position, which is the profit sharing position.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see why there should be a difference that's based on nationality. That difference shouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why the only time you should become an equity partner and making good money is when you're a foreign lawyer who obtains status and then says that he or she's Caymanian. I think that's a flawed system. I think we need to lower the bases with Caymanians and put energy into them. Tell them that they're worthy, tell them that they have value. And those Caymanians also believe they have value to reach the next level and work hard to get to the next level. The ultimate being a partner, preferably being an equity partner. But what I was saying earlier is, in terms of a solution, the way that this legal services bill is drafted,
Mm-hmm.
it's saying that if you're a law firm, you're only required to have one Caymanian partner. And my solution to that is this should be amended to say that we should have different levels. So we should consider how many lawyers are in this law firm.
Mm-hmm.
What I was saying earlier is if you have a level one, 5 or less attorneys in a law firm, then you can say, okay, at least one of those people has to be Caymanian and has to be a partner and has to be a profit sharing partner. At the next level, you could say, what if your law firm had, let's say, 6 to 20 attorneys?
Mm-hmm.
You can say at least 3 of those must be Caymanian partners. And at
Mm-hmm.
least 3 of those must be a profit sharing partner. And then the last level I would look at is, let's say you have a law firm with over 20 attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
Then you say, you know what? We need to ensure that we have good Caymanian representation in these big firms. So a firm of 20 or over attorneys, we could say, listen, 1/3 of those guys should be Caymanian partners. And a good percentage of those should be equity partners.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In my view, in the absence of these requirements, the law firms will have no incentive to hire, train, or promote Caymanian attorneys to salary partner or equity partner. Instead, what the law firms will do, simply hire one Caymanian attorney, So the current draft of the bill only requires one Caymanian partner. If that stays in place, what the firms will be tempted to do is to just hire the minimum. They will just hire that one Caymanian partner and then hire non-Caymanians for the other positions and seek Cayman status for those other positions. So what I'm saying is that unless you have it written into the law, the lawyers won't follow it. And currently, the only requirement they have to follow if this passes into law in the current form is only one person has to be Caymanian in the whole firm. So think about it. Let's say you have 300 lawyers in a law firm. Can you imagine only one of them can eat? Just think about it that way. You have 300 people eating a good meal and one person watching them eat. That's what's basically is happening. So in terms of solutions, that's what I'm proposing as solutions is that we look at the number of lawyers in each firm and then saying a certain percentage of those lawyers should be Caymanian and not just a regular associate in the firm, but also a partner in the firm being a salary partner or a profit sharing partner.
Okay. Sorry, Alric. Let's just have a look at some of the comments here. So Cindy says Caymanians are being blocked from opportunities and are being left out for too long. It's time that we take a stand and let our voices be heard. What would you respond to Cindy with?
Like I say, part of the problem is the system is in place. We can challenge the system that's in place. For example, the system that's being put in place by the Legal Services Bill. We can challenge this by commenting and making sure our comments are included. Right now is a period for comments on Legal Services Bill before it goes to the House. So the public can now make comments on the bill to ensure that there are provisions in there where Caymanians are protected. That's the first step. The second step is ensuring that you have policymakers in this government that are willing, have the will to actually enforce the law. So there are two steps. You participate to ensure you have the proper provisions in the law, and then you ensure that you elect the people that have a backbone, that will stand up to special interests, that will say no to special interests and consider the interests of our Caymanians.
Wow, I think that second one, obviously, come May the 26th is where people need to make sure that they're voting correctly. So Cindy goes on to say that they turn a blind eye to the bigger crimes, but see to it that youths are held down in a corner. Hams is in agreement with that. Flashpoint, I'm not ignoring your comment, but I think that's a whole other show, so we'll get to that in a second. Hams also says, I remember I was blocked for years due to my police record because Caymanians have things where most of them don't forgive or is willing to give second chances. Up to today, I have to give thanks to Mr. Garth Arch. He always believed in me. So again, Hans makes the point that even a minor infraction on your good record or, on your record, you've gotten a little situation, had to go to court, and you've got a conviction that can trail you for many, many years. We have run out of time for this morning's show. As you guys know, the program is from 7:30 until 9:30, Monday to Friday. And then on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings, we have a 1-hour segment from 7 to 8 p.m. I want to thank all of you for tuning in this morning. Flashpoint wants you to speak about educational services in the Cayman Islands. So Alric, perhaps you can put that on the agenda for next week, where we can delve into some of the issues and concerns about the educational system here. I also wanted to just make a note that we continue to watch this hurricane as it prepares now to reemerge off of land and enter back into the Caribbean, and we may very well be in its direct path. My apologies, tropical depression, which is at 30 miles per hour, but we do expect it to gain back some of its strength, and we have to be prepared for whatever it brings with it. So continue to monitor. I know the government keeps telling you guys to monitor the official sources, I certainly have no issues with people doing that, but the unofficial sources, such as Cayman Mall Road, we keep you very much up to date, folks, and we will certainly continue to do so. Mr. Walton, thank you for joining in. Hans and Cece, thank you guys for joining in. We had Flashpoint, Louis, Bruce, who else was here for it? Linda, Odette, Cy, Miss Sue McLaughlin, Tracy from Jamaica, Marshall from North Carolina, Gina, Irvelyn, Olivia, everyone, Elizabeth. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and joining us this morning. We will be having our segment this evening. There is a bit of a situation that was going viral yesterday. I thought yesterday was a very busy day in terms of all the things that people are sending me. But one story that I got multiple times over and over again is about a local DJ, AKA photographer, who has been doing shady things allegedly for many, many years when it comes to some of the girls that he's been working with. And one of them has actually reached out to us now, wanting to warn other young ladies about him and about his behavior. So that is one of the stories that we're working on. We've seen some screenshots and messages, and we need to find out, how she wants to share her story, how she wants to put the warning out there. The thing that I always have with Caymanians, folks, I stand up for you guys. I put my neck on the chopping block, as you can see with the whole Matthew Leslie thing. That's why I'm in court. But I can't always do it alone. There are times when you, as the actual victims of these situations, need to come forward and you need to let your voices be heard. And there's an important message in that people who put themselves out there for other people can only go so far before the people who are actually impacted by the situation need to find their own voices. There was also another situation with a handicapped individual. Both him and his brother have some deficiencies and some handicaps, reaching out to me yesterday saying that they had been arrested by police officers and, in their opinion, mistreated because I guess the police officers either don't know or don't care that they're special needs individuals. And that has led to some issues. So I'm trying to now find an attorney to assist them with that situation. So I appreciate that, and I want you guys to appreciate that we get the gamut in terms of the issues that are brought to our attention, the concerns that are brought forward. And it's everything from rich people who have a specific concern or issue, maybe it's related to land or whatever that they want highlighted, as well as poor people who just want a little bit of justice in their own neighborhood or in their lives. So in case you missed it last night, folks, there was a story I was really moved to do. It is an editorial piece. It says, Fear Thy Neighbor. It's based on the same title of a show that's on Investigative Discovery. And it's about the Mendoza family in the district of West Bay who have tortured the Adam family for the better half of 5 years. 32 phone calls made to the police since August the 15th of 2008. Folks, that's only about 2 years and change. Of the 32 phone calls, 9 have been recorded of crimes, 23 were categorized, and 17 as civil disputes by the police. 2 were determined to be harassment, alarm, distress. 1 prowler, 1 careless driving, 1 public environmental matter, and 1 person in distress. Folks, this situation is unbelievable. Can you imagine having the police called to your house or your neighborhood, dealing directly with you some 32 times in 2 years? And you guys need to have a look at the story. If you haven't already, I've just shared the story in the description. Check it out. It's a real eye-opener, I think, of what has been transpiring. And I kind of feel that sometimes people are not always cognizant and aware of the stresses that other people have been put under until it's gone too far, until it's at the point of no return and something has happened. So I hope that you guys read that and you find that story interesting. The question in my mind is, where's the end to this? When is the judicial review coming up? We've heard nothing about it. And now we're going into a year and still there has been no information. I think it's been over a year when Mr. Mendoza stopped the government from putting in their road. And there has been nothing. Government has not said, the legal department has not said This is the court date that we have, even if it's in 2 months' time, 3 months' time, absolutely nothing. We want to know what's the situation here. Alric, Ham sends his blessings to you. Miss Juanita just joined in. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Alric. We're going to see you again on next week, Thursday. Perhaps we can discuss education on that day, or part 2 of the legal services bill. I must say, one of the things I like and appreciate with Alric is he's not here just telling you what the problems are, even with this legislation, for example, but he is saying, here are the possible alternative solutions. Here's how we can easily fix this. Here's what we can do. And today he has brought, as usual, some solutions with him to the table. Now, Alric, will you be submitting those formally to the government through this consultative process?
Yes, there's a formal process. On the Gazette website, I think they give an email address. On the Caymanian Gazette website, they give an email address where you're supposed to send your comments. So I will be sending those comments to that address, and also sending my comments to the representatives, so they're aware of what some of the comments are from members of the legal profession. I'm only one person, but these people are public servants, and I am a member of the public, and hopefully they will consider my comments and their deliberation process. I only wanted to say, one of your viewers said that, that's how boards work in terms of majority of votes. The situation with the Legal Services Board is that there are only 4 people that are being proposed to be members of the Legal Services Board. And we talked about the possible conflicts of interest that could arise and governance issues that could arise earlier. But if you only have 4 people, you're not going to have a majority vote. Where you're going to have is, when you have a deadlock, you're going to have one person who has an extra vote. Now, that's not the ideal situation when it comes to governing such a large legal profession, and where there's so many huge implications of the actions that you take. So in the case of the Legal Services Board, what I'm proposing is that we change the number from 4 people to an odd number, which is 5 or 7 people. And that 5 or 7 people will always result in majority rules. So if you truly want majority rules, then you need to tell your representative to change their current proposal for the composition of Legal Services Board from 4 to 5 or 7, so that you always have a situation where you have a clear yes or no.
All right, my dear. Thank you so much for that. So again, Alric will be joining us next week, Thursday. Make sure that you mark your calendar and you tune in at that time. 7:30 in the morning is when we get started. We will be here tomorrow morning. Tomorrow we'll spend some time looking at the devastation that Hurricane Eta, now Tropical Depression Eta, has left in its wake, including speaking to some persons in Honduras. And we don't have any contacts in Nicaragua, but maybe between now and tomorrow we can find some to see how the storm has impacted them. Alric, have a beautiful and productive day. It's raining, so put your raincoat on, put your umbrella in the car, folks. And we will certainly be seeing all of you here this evening at 7 p.m., God's willing. Have a super, super safe day, folks, and be blessed as always.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.